Hi, Keith here from Academy of Bass. Today I'm going to be looking at the chromatic scale and how you can use chromatic notes to add some real spice to your bass lines. You can use chromatic notes to play standalone lines, or you can use them as the glue within your bass lines to combine with the chord and scale tones that you're playing. Now, technically speaking, a chromatic note is any note that doesn't belong to a scale or a key center, but really simply, the chromatic scale is just every single note on your instrument. And today I'm going to be looking at how many ways we can play this on the neck. And also I'm going to be looking at how we can use chromatic notes to add some real spice and flavour to our bass lines. I'm going to start by playing a chromatic scale from open E. So we've got open E, F, F sharp, G and G sharp. You can see that I'm using one finger per fret. We've got to G sharp, so we've got A, open A sharp, B, C, C sharp. Open D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp and B. So, nice straightforward fingering. And I could stop there, but I'm going to continue. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and I'm moving up again to E with my little finger. And when we play this in reverse, E, D sharp, D, C sharp, moving down to C with my first finger, B, A sharp, A, G sharp, open G, F sharp, F, E, D sharp, open D, C sharp, C, B, A sharp, open A, G sharp, G, F sharp, F, and open E. And this is the only place on the bass we can play with this shape. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move it up the neck just so that you can see the impact of starting it from a different note. And I'm starting from G here at the 3rd fret. We've got G, G sharp, A sharp. And this time I'm moving to B with my little finger. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D. I'm going to keep going. D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and I'm moving up to G. So you can see that when we move up the neck, I'm leading with the little finger, which is very common when we play scales on bass. The other thing about this scale pattern is when we move across each string, we're starting from the same fret position. So let's move down the scale now. So we're at G, F sharp, F, E, leading with my first finger to D sharp, D, C sharp, C, B, A sharp, A, G sharp, G, F sharp, F, E, D sharp, D, C sharp, C, B, A sharp, A, G sharp, and G. And these are the only two ways that we can play with these types of scale patterns. So I'm going to look at a third option now that's going to give us a very different scale pattern. I'm starting from C here at the 8th fret of the E string. So we've got C, C sharp, D, and D sharp. This time I'm not sliding up the neck. I'm looking for E. There's E, F, F sharp, and G. G sharp, A sharp, and B. C, C sharp, D, and D sharp. So this is a little bit strange because when we ascend the bass, usually we're working from the lower part of the neck up to the top and we increase in pitch. This time we're increasing in pitch, but we're crossing the bass diagonally, and it actually looks like we're descending, but we're not. And from this D sharp, if we come down now, D sharp, D, C sharp, C, B, A sharp, A, G sharp, G, F sharp, F, E, D sharp, D, C sharp, and C. When we come down the neck, we're also crossing the neck diagonally, but in a different direction. I'm going to look at another way of playing the scale, and this time I'm descending from a G here at the 12th fret. So we've got G, F sharp, F, E, D sharp, D, C sharp, C, B, A sharp, A, G sharp, G, F sharp, E, E, D sharp, D, C sharp, C. So as in the previous scale where we started here at G, when we crossed each string we started from the same fret, the 3rd fret. This time, every time we cross the string, we're starting from the 12th fret. So we've got a variety of different ways we can play the chromatic scale, along with some suggested fingerings. By the way, you don't have to use these fingerings. If you've got fingerings that you feel much more comfortable with, by all means use your own fingerings. What I'm going to do now is look at how we can use some chromatic lines in our bass playing. Just before I get into the playing, there are a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Earlier on I did say that the chromatic scale was essentially every note on the instrument, but the one thing that I haven't looked at is how to play this on a single string. So really quickly, open E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp and E. So you can see that I'm moving up the neck using one finger per fret. You may also have noticed that I haven't actually played a 1-octave scale today, and that's because I've chosen to show you these scale variations across all strings. But if you wanted to work out a 1-octave scale for yourself, it's really easy. And just to show you really quickly, we've got C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp and G, G sharp, A sharp and B, and we can move up to C with the little finger. And as an alternative, from G sharp we could move up to A with the 1st finger. And finally, on the subject of fingerings, all of the fingerings that I'm using are just suggestions. They work really well for me, but that doesn't mean that I don't sometimes alter them depending on the playing situation. So if they don't work for you, or you just prefer to use a different fingering, that's absolutely fine. So let's start playing now. I'm going to be playing over a 2-chord vamp, so we've got E7 to A7. E7 is E, G sharp, B and D, or root 3rd, 5th and flat and 7th. A7 is A, C sharp, E and G. And I'm going to start by playing a line that you probably already play yourself, and if not, I'm sure it's something that you're familiar with the sound of, and this is it. So I'm starting with a really easy line here. And all I'm doing is I'm approaching each chord from below with a series of 4 chromatic notes. And we can do the same from above too. Now I'm going to mix it up. Below, above, below again, above. This time above and below, above again and below. So you can hear that that's a really great sound, and I use lines like that in my playing all the time. So let's look at how we can use some of the other chromatic lines now. I'm going to be playing a little groove over this 2-chord vamp, which is... So over the E7, I'm essentially playing the arpeggio. I'm playing E, the root note, G sharp, the 3rd, which I'm leading into with the flattened 3rd G. Then I'm on to D, the flattened 7th. Then it's C sharp, which is the 3rd of A, and from there, A, the root, and I'm pulling off to G, the flattened 7th. And it's from this G that I'm going to play the chromatic line. So we've got G sharp, A sharp, B, moving up to C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, moving up to F, F sharp, G, and then G sharp, which is where we start on the E chord again. So we've got... And now I'm going to look at a couple of different ways we can play this line. So the first one's nice and straightforward. We're going to slide from B to C and E to F. And there's a third way, which is this. G sharp, A sharp, B. Then we're going to diagonally cross the strings, so it's C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. And of course we can slide into this note too. So this is what they sound like back to back. I'm going to try something a little bit different this time, and I'm going to use one of the diagonal fingerings. So starting at E at the 12th fret of the E string, I'm playing. And when I hit G at the 12th fret of the G string, instead of playing chromatically, I'm going to move straight to A, which is the root note of the second chord. Now that's quite a handful, and it's a long line, and there's no reason why we need to play a long line. So what I'm going to do is shorten this as well. So I'm going to start from E, but I'm going to play it here. That's the second fragment, and from here I'm at B, and I'm going to jump straight to A. Now obviously I've got to fit that in with the groove that I'm playing, but this is what both variations sound like. The last thing I'd like to look at is from a diagonal descending line. And as with all of these sequences of notes, it's quite long, so I'm going to pick a shorter fragment, and it's this: E, D sharp, D, C sharp, C, B, A sharp, A, which is a perfect line to play over these chords. So not only is this an effective harmonic workout, it's a great way to help develop and improve your technique too. The options for using chromatic lines in your playing are endless, but for me the most effective way, certainly to start with, is to use short sequences of notes. And if you work them in with your harmonic lines, that's when they can sound the best. There are tons of tunes that use chromatic runs, like Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin, Habanera, which is from the opera Carmen, The Flight of the Bumblebee, and Chromosome by Mike Stern. And that's just a few examples that span a range of musical genres. If you haven't already given me a shout out, let me know in the comments what you think of this lesson. Make sure you pick up the PDF too, that link's posted below. Feel free to give things the thumbs up. Support the channel by subscribing. Thanks for joining me today. Look forward to seeing you again. And in the meantime, happy practicing.